This is wild. Oh my goodness. So let me just say this before we even get into the nitty-gritty. I do not care if you believe Kyle Rittenhouse is innocent or if you believe he is guilty. I do not care. That is going to be decided in a court of law by a jury, not here on YouTube. They're going to go off of the facts and the evidence because, once again, we don't believe women, we don't believe men, we believe facts and evidence. That's how that's going to go. I don't care. This isn't a video about guilty or innocent. I'm just putting that out there. Having said that, the judge said in the hearing things that I found to be problematic, and I'm going to explain to you why I find them problematic. So, if you watch the hearing, and I did, all 2 hours and 30 minutes of it, the judge goes on to say that, hey, he's not going to allow the word victim to be used in regular discourse during the trial, right? Not even the opening statement. And he goes on to explain his reasoning as it's being too loaded. He feels that it's a loaded term.
I think it's the word victim is a loaded word.
He even goes so far as to say that he won't even allow the term alleged victim to be used in discourse.
And I think alleged victim is a cousin to it.
I find that to be crazy because alleged is that you have to prove it to be true, okay? I get that he doesn't want to use victim because he feels that, it's a loaded term. I get that. I understand, right? But alleged victim, that's something that's what they're arguing, that the deceased was the alleged victim of a crime that took place by Kyle Rittenhouse. The fact that you won't even allow alleged victim because he feels that it's the cousin of a victim is beyond words to me.
And this is a long-held opinion of mine, which very few judges, I guess, share with me, and I've talked with others around the state, and they're scratching their heads, why is Schrader doing that?
Now, the prosecution brings up to what they believe to be hypocrisy in that rule, and saying that, hey, I can't say victim, but you're going to allow them to say that, that the deceased were rioters, were looters, right, were arsonists. How is that fair? The judge then replies that, hey, they can say that they're rioters, looters, arsonists, whatnot, if they can prove it, okay? And he gives this example of Smitty, this imaginary person. He says Smitty was, an avid churchgoer. He, fed the homeless, yada, yada, yada. And he doesn't see how that's even comparable to the argument the argument the prosecution is making in regards about victim.
But I don't think that has anything to do with this issue, where if there's evidence to support, one of the people. Let's give a mythical name to someone who might have been shot in this instance, and we'll talk about Smitty. And I don't think there'd be anything inappropriate about you talking to the jury and saying, Smitty was an active churchgoer. He was always at all the festivals, and he helped people out. He'd raise money, and he'd take it down personally and give it to people. And that's all. That's all. You could do that and beatify this person for the jury.
And the prosecution the prosecution obviously says that makes no sense, right? Because even the judge, even using that as example, obviously, right, when someone tries to say that, hey, my client was an avid churchgoer, they were feeding the homeless, they're trying to paint a picture, right? They're trying to paint a picture of the character of the client, okay? So the examples they're giving are loaded in order to make the jury perceive their client in such a light, in a positive light. Just as arsonists or looters, right, or rioters is used to make the jury see the prosecution or the deceased in a negative light. So for him to say that victim is loaded, but rioters, arsonists, and looters is not loaded is mind-blowing to me. The fact is that if they can prove that these individuals were in fact rioters, looters, arsonists, whatever that is, then so be it. But if the prosecution can also prove, right? If they can prove that, hey, their client, the deceased, were also alleged victims, given the facts and evidence they present during trial. So it doesn't make any sense why the prosecution cannot say that their client were victims despite having proved it, right, in trial, said in trial, right? They can't use that term, but the defense can call their client a victim, an arsonist, a looter, if they can prove it. I don't see how that's fair.
I respectfully disagree, Your Honor. I think it's the exact same issue. The terms that I'm identifying here, such as rioters, looters, arsonists, are as loaded, if not more loaded, than the term victim, Your Honor. And I've had many trials with you, Your Honor, where there has been evidence that a person has suffered some sort of injury at the hands of the defendant, and you have still not allowed me to call them a victim, even after the evidence has come in. Because there's been no jury determination. I don't think
you're accurate about that. I am talking about the use of the term victim in regular discourse, not in final argument when you're arguing that the person was the victim of a crime.
If they can prove that, and they can prove that, then they should be able to use those said terms, because they're both loaded. Loaded really isn't the issue, as we saw with arsonists, looters, and rioters, given what the judge said is his reasoning. So by the judge giving this asinine, example of Smitty, I feel he undermines his entire reasoning. He then goes on to say that, hey, they can even go so far as to demonize them if it gives them points for the jury.
He can demonize them if he wants, if he thinks he's going to score points with the jury.
I don't know where to begin on that. I was like, so they pretty much have carte blanche to an extent, because he says, hey, they have it up to an extent, and he gives an example of another individual.
What he can't do, one of the people who formerly worked in the district attorney's office, more than once I had to reprove him for telling a jury, calling the defendant a worthless excuse for a human being. That's out of line.
So they can demonize this person, but the prosecution can't use the word victim. I don't see how that makes any sense, and it doesn't. And he even acknowledges it by saying, "Hey, this is just in my case. I mean, in my courtroom, I'm apparently the only one of the only judges that do this."
And this is a long-held opinion of mine, which very few judges, I guess, share with me, and I've talked with others around the state. And they're scratching their heads, why is Schrader doing that?
Your Honor, I have practiced in most of the courts in this county, and other than you, as you rightly pointed out, the other judges do allow us to call people victims, even at the beginning in an opening statement. And I would like to be able to do that in your court, but you've made it clear to me that we can't.
The prosecution relays him. He's like, yo, I understand that's, your reasoning for that, being that, don't want to call him victim because that has yet to be determined, whatnot. But he's like, that I find that ludicrous because we have, victims' rights. I defend victims, yada, 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 yada. And he explains to him why what the judge's rule is absurd, is ludicrous.
And I think your concern there is that it is a loaded term. We are telling the jury something when there's been no judicial determination of that. And I think that's your reason for prohibiting the use of that term. I disagree. I think the state should be allowed to use it. We have a statute called the Victims' Rights Law. We have a constitutional amendment protecting the rights of victims. Our office works very hard to protect the rights of people that are victims of crime. And we have a department called our Victim Witness Coordinator. So we use the term all the time. I use it all the time, and I think it should be used all the time.
And it seems that it's giving favor to the defense. So they're fighting right now with one arm tied behind their back. And regardless of whether you think Kyle is innocent or guilty, you should have a problem with that if you are for justice, if you are for truth, okay? If you are for fairness, right? That's what we want, fairness. So if someone's line of logic, someone's line of reasoning is a little off, right? Or they're a few clowns short of a circus, then you should have a problem with that. All right? You have people on the right who are praising this decision.
Oh, look at this. The judge is based. The judge is going on the right side of history.
If this was reversed, right? If the roles were reversed, I don't know, let's say it was Ashley Babbitt and the officer or whatever, Would you be praising the decision if they didn't allow, them to call Ashley Babbitt a victim or whatnot, right? But the officer could call her a domestic terrorist, an insurrectionist, a criminal, yada yada yada? Of course not. And this is why I can't stand this whole right and left. I can't stand it, okay? Because they're two clowns in the same circus fighting over peanuts. I gave my reason as far as why I find this problematic. I don't get the reasoning of the judge. It doesn't make any sense. It is what it is. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Let me know what you guys think. Whether or not you believe, Lucas, Kyle was defending himself, all right? He was defending himself by people here trying to attack him, man. Teeth and be a limb. Or if you didn't believe, Kyle's a murderer. He murdered these people in innocent cold blood, and it's a shame, and he needs to be hung, and it's absolutely disgusting. Lord in heaven, I can't deal with either one of y'all. I can't deal with any one of y'all. I say lock both of these individuals in a room and then just clean up the mess afterwards. Either or. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe. Oh, that fun stuff. Till next time, guys, be amazing. Right? That's what we want. Fairness.